Welcome to Business Insights. I'm Mr. Kerridge, and I'm delighted to say we welcome Karen Elliott today from the EarthSpirit Centre in the UK. Very fortunate to have Karen with us today, who's going to share some of her insights in terms of the EarthSpirit Centre. What is that business? What's the activities? Maybe how it's been impacted by COVID and the response to that as well. So thanks, Karen. Thanks for giving up your time.
It's a pleasure.
I'm really pleased to have you here today. I know the students are going to benefit from your inputs. In terms of just a starting point, just to kick off, just to give the students some background, can you just give them some insight in terms of what is the EarthSpirit Centre, what's its activities, maybe where it's located?
I certainly will. So we are a residential retreat centre in Somerset, which is probably two and a bit hours away from London, which is our busiest. Most of our delegates come from that area, but we also have international students from all over the world. What we provide is accommodation and the educational space. So we have two venues in our 7 acres of it was a dairy farm, and it was probably about 300 years old. And it's just been a dairy farm all that time until about 30 years ago when David Taylor bought it. And he bought it for his family, really. So it didn't really have the intention of it being a retreat centre. So David had a vision as a young man that he wanted to have a sustainable lifestyle. So this is quite revolutionary back then. And he purchased the property so that he wouldn't have to be traveling. So like most of us, we probably move house several times during our lifetime. That wasn't what he wanted to do. And this is how he started. So once he'd established himself, his friends had said, "Hey, David, how about I come up and maybe use your barn for maybe a yoga retreat or a craft workshop?" And he said, "Oh yeah, brilliant, no, come on down." And this built up over momentum, and eventually realized with the renovations that he was doing on the property and tree planting, that he had a retreat business, and this is where it's developed. So he was kind of gifted it, and now he's developed it, and we have a long established clientele who come. Plus, we also have a seed bank of new people who maybe have been participants in the other groups and then have gone out onto their own to be teachers in their own field. So we attract that kind of business. So if it's about personal growth, if it's about spiritual development, if it's maybe body work, so somebody might be doing shiatsu or learning massage, those are the types of groups that come to us, and they might come for a week, they might come for a weekend, or during our summertime, so we believe July to August, we generally hosting small festivals. So we say it's a festival, but it may be as small as 100 people, not Glastonbury Festival, which is obviously very close to where we live, but it's so we haven't got the thousands of people, but we have very intimate, private events on our land and in our property. So and we've carried on with that eco theme right the way through. We've had eco awards, so we've got a green tourism award, and where we can, we try and use everything as sustainable as possible. So even to the things like cushions that we use, they will be cotton cushions, they won't be acrylic cushions. Things like our wastewater from from the showers, it becomes a grey water, and then we can use that in other ways on the site as well. So even to the things like we have something called lotus paint, which is a plant-based paint. It sheds water, so it keeps our buildings dry as they possibly can be. So we're always looking for these amazing, innovative new products that we can use in our business to show people that they can take some of these practical solutions that we found back in and use them in their life as well.
That sounds really, really interesting. Thank you for that, Karen, in terms of the insights of the business, its activities, and obviously this sustainable point, which we're going to touch on a little bit later. It's really, really interesting because it's an area we look at with the students. Just in terms of the size of the business and your role within the business, can we just explore that a little bit in terms of what your role is, the size of the business, the people that you manage?
Yeah. So I arrived at EarthSpirit 2 years ago, and we have about, on a normal year, over 3,000 people come to stay with us. That for us is pretty good, and we've been able to expand over the last 2 years because we only had one venue. Now we've got two, plus we built some extra bedrooms. The bedrooms are, instead of being one bed in each room, we put twin beds in, so two people can share, and that obviously that doubles our capacity, and we've had sustained growth all the way through. So this was interesting. Being prepared for something that you can't see on the horizon was an interesting aspect last March.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a second. That's really interesting. Thank you for that. In terms of your role as the general manager, obviously our students look at leadership and management styles. How would you describe that in terms of, what's the size of the workforce that you've got there, in terms of who do you manage, how do you approach that, and why?
Yes, right. So the general manager's role is basically the overseer of all the departments. So we have David, the owner, then there's me. So I do something called the captain's walk in the morning. And the captain's walk means that I meet the head of the departments. So for instance, David and the maintenance manager, they will meet first thing in the morning, and I'll probably be part of that meeting, and I'll be listening to the continual maintenance that happens. So we're a big property, and that didn't stop. So all the way through this pandemic, we've still got to cut the grass, we've still got to look after the trees, we've still got to look after the buildings. So that was an ongoing department, and obviously a cost was running. Then when we are open and have guests, we also do catering. So we have to feed everybody. So there we have a kitchen manager and an assistant. And we also have housekeeping to change the linens and make everything fresh and welcoming. And we have a house manager for that with an assistant. And we also, when it's really busy, as I say, in the summertime, we can get really, really busy. We also invite and have a list of people that we can call on to come in to help with the extra cooking, to help with the housekeeping. And that's a really nice, useful local thing to have, to call on. They can come in at a moment's notice. And I have to, as the general manager, keep an eye on people's work patterns, make sure they're not overdoing it, make sure I've got enough resources so that somebody can take a holiday without feeling, oh gosh, who's going to back up my department. I also have somebody who looks after the IT as well. We're in an interesting situation in that the little village that we're in, there was a campaign to put a 4G mast into our village, and the villagers and ourselves didn't want that, so we campaigned and we don't have that, but everything is working beautifully. Everybody can get in touch with everything, but it's just one of those moments in a business. We decided that's what the people didn't want, so we helped and campaigned against it. Made the newspapers as well, of course. We've also got a bookkeeper.
Right, okay.
And I touch a little bit on sales and marketing, and we buy in other services. And this is really important. So we were a very small team. So I buy in HR services, and I also buy in accounting. So the bookkeeper does the books, obviously, and up to sort of pulling the management accounts together. And then finally, when we go for submission, the annual submissions, that's when we call in our accountant to do that final level.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting in terms of insight into your role and maybe how that differs depending on different parts of the year and, what you're involved in different activities.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to have to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, because of the pandemic, I've had to shrink the departments. Yeah. So I've kept the managers as heads of each of those departments, but some of the extra staff that we had in, especially for maintenance, we've had to shrink that right back. And they have to understand that it's just a temporary thing while we're doing the pandemic, because we've got no income. Yeah. And when we're back up and running, which I hope will be a few months' time from now, then we'll be putting a call out. In fact, at the moment, I've got 4 roles I'm advertising for locally. Right. So we're getting ready for when we can open to get the people in position.
Yeah, fingers crossed that'll be very shortly.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. Just taking a step back, obviously at the beginning you mentioned around sustainability and how important that is to the business. You alluded to some awards. Obviously in the classroom we explore that when we look at corporate social responsibility, business ethics. Obviously it's a big area we look at and the students find it very, very interesting, and obviously we know it's raised on the agenda with businesses, but obviously it's obviously crucial and to your business and obviously the foundations really of what it was being built on. So I just want to explore that a little bit further in terms of what some of them awards were, why it is so important, maybe some of the cost implications, decisions that you make as a business, and maybe the benefits of doing that, and maybe how does it differentiate your business from maybe other businesses as well.
Well, again, David's vision for this retreat was a way ahead of the curve, and his background. He's one of the founder members of the Green Party, right, the political party here. And I understand that their very first opening evening was actually held in my office. So there's a bottle of champagne on there. So he walks his talk. This man actually does try and live very lightly on the earth, right, and improve the acres that he's got. So he's planting trees that are indigenous to Somerset, and where he can, he's just trying to improve the whole health of the earth. A lot of the microbiomes that are in the earth are just, he hasn't fertilized, he's just used organic compost. There's nothing on there that's any chemical, as in manufactured chemicals. Obviously there's chemicals in compost, but we try and live as lightly and in harmony with nature as possible, and we reap the rewards of having quite a variety of different species of shrubs that have come in, or wildflowers that have come in. But we're even doing more this year. We planted even more trees. There's over 3,000 trees planted before the pandemic, but since the pandemic we built a massive hill because we had some waste soil from a build. We turned that into a hill. It's got a spiral around it, and when you get to the top you've got this amazing view over the valley, and that's going to be planted with trees and wildflowers from one of the conservancy pods of seeds that you can get. Yeah. So that's what we'll be working on. We've even got one of our buildings is called Cordwood, and that's got a living roof.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, so that's unusual. We've used we went and sourced skills to build this Cordwood building. There's that's a whole project in itself. Of what we can do there. So for our how we position ourselves in the world of retreats, yes, it was important to get the awards, and because we come into hospitality and tourism, we got the Green Award. Just checking now. So it was an ethical green award. They basically looked to us to provide a report, and we had to back it up with an audit. Okay. So we had an independent auditor who came along and tested what we said we were doing. Were we actually doing it? Much easier to write it down than actually show it off. So so we had to prove that, and we obviously got that award. I'm just looking down here. We also got the Federation of Small Businesses, which I'd recommend. If that's a brilliant networking and support group. I don't know if your students have something similar they can have a look at. Yeah. But again, for a small business like us, they're really handy. And we were shortlisted for the Ethical Green Business of the Year award as well. Yeah. And this magazine, I'm just going to show you now. This is called Kindred Spirit. And it's aligned, the readership are people who are looking for spiritual development, therapies, meditation, and relationship development. And David got invited to go to their dinner, and unbeknownst to him, he was called up on stage, and Kindred Spirit also gave him an award for starting this business and the ethics of it as well. So that was one we didn't have to pursue. That was just a given to us, which is rather nice.
It's clearly a recognition of the things that are happening there at the EarthSpirit Centre, the overall vision of the organisation, and the fact that you walk in, you're actually clearly demonstrating that with the action decisions that David and yourself are taking, and clearly the customers, your customers that are coming, are obviously. Yeah.
They appreciate it. And they learn something as well. I mean, even on the audit, apparently, they even made a little tip note that we use solar-powered calculators in the office.
Right, so down to that level.
It was really down to that level, yeah.
Yeah, really, really interesting for the students to explore that a little bit further.
Yeah. If somebody's going to do it, be aware that it takes a huge chunk of time. It really is a standard. It's not something you can just do 10 minutes a day. It's a really in-depth, important document. And also, when you're working on it, you'll be challenged as to why you're doing things and why you're doing things in a certain way. Which can lead to more improvements, actually.
Yes, that process itself is, very, very useful in terms of just understanding.
Yes, because you're self-reflecting. Yeah.
It's really useful in terms of that insight into a business that's, as I said, clearly got them principles and that vision and mission. And as I said, it's obviously clearly driving the decision and actions that the business is taking.
Absolutely.
Just obviously at this point, I think it's useful just to touch on, we are still in a period of COVID. Hopefully, we are coming to the back end of that. But obviously, you've alluded to the fact that, in terms of income, that's been cut off for the business. So it'd be very, very interesting just to understand from yourself as general manager what that experience has been like for you in terms of, some of the challenges, and what you think, obviously, in terms of the opportunities moving forward.
Yeah. Well, the COVID situation, when it hit us last March, I had a full diary back to back with bookings coming from UK international bookings, and we kind of had an inkling maybe from January that something was going on, but we weren't prepared for close down, but we were aware that this pandemic was happening. And when the government actually announced that the whole of hospitality was closing down, we literally had probably 24 hours notice. And of course, staff are shocked. Your income has just ended, and I had to contact all of the people who'd booked and reassure them and ask them what they wanted to do. So cash flow at this point for future bookings, the way we operate is that we hold deposits when people make a booking. So that's on a daily rate. When they actually arrive and on their last day of their booking, that is when we charge them for the food and accommodation. Right. So our cash flow is limited to that deposit money. So we have to be extremely careful, because it's not ours, of course, not until the person's received what we're selling them. So that has to be parked to one side, and we had to, luckily, because we're that kind of business, we like your personal, you have some money set aside for emergencies. So we were able to go through that very quickly. After the announcement that we were closed, the government announced about furlough, which was a word not even used here. Furlough was something the American Army did. You went on furlough, went away for the weekend. Here we had, what on earth is this? And it was the idea to save people's jobs, because if we're closed, really what should have happened, because everybody's contract says it, you go on to short time working or you get laid off, which means we haven't got any work for you. Thank you, goodbye, end of contract. And we lose all the skills and experience in one fell swoop. So this furlough was an extremely imaginative, creative way of allowing us to hang on to our staff, and they're getting some money, and hopefully it'll go. So I think the furlough got extended 3 times now, because they weren't sure. And that has been an absolute godsend to the staff and to us as well. We were able to open in July, and I had to pivot a little bit because the social distancing didn't allow for meetings to be indoors. But it was July, and a few of my guests were able to host their training sessions outside. Who knew? These things happen. You ask people, can you do this? Oh yes, we can. Okay, let's try this. So they were delighted. They were able to run their courses, and they were living in tents, and we had like a field kitchen, so we were feeding them out in the gardens, and we had good weather. Last summer was fantastic, so that worked. And we also opened up for the public, because I couldn't get enough people in. We opened up for glamping. Do you know that word? Yeah. So we have yurts and bell tents, and we set them out with proper beds in, so wooden beds, mattresses. It's all very chic and lovely, and people could hire those as a family, you see. Okay. And that was completely okay, because they didn't mix with anyone. They had their own dedicated bathrooms, and that was a whole new business. So in a very short period of time, because weather here isn't great, we had about 6 weeks of all this extra business that we hadn't thought about, but we now are able to exploit. And how I did the marketing for that was I found a company, an American company, but they're here in the UK, and they were able to get us on their website. And those people in the UK that wanted a camping holiday, because the government was saying, have a staycation, you can go camping. So everyone was going onto this website, found us and booked us. Yeah. So we've got a little following, and those people were very kind and given us some great reviews, and that brought more business in. But it's weather dependent, and basically from about August bank holiday, that business dried up. It's now starting up again. So as of tomorrow, we're allowed to have campers, but we're not allowed to have the groups. So we'll see a little bit of business coming through from that, which is something we'll probably keep going for a little while, because our accommodation numbers, we're expecting to be told, instead of having 2 people per room, I can only have 1 person. So where we would normally host 100 people, its maximum is going to be 50. That's if people are confident about coming or travelling. Yeah. So we've got all of these other hurdles ahead of us. Mm. So having a different income stream is really important to be able to pivot that quickly.
Yeah, that's the glamping experience sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it does look lush.
And obviously, from the student's point of view, just understanding obviously the challenges that COVID's presented for your business, and then how you've adapted to that, and maybe found other revenue streams and what that might mean going forward. Really, really interesting. So thank you for that. You mentioned one thing a moment ago, and I just want to touch on that before we nearly finish. Is obviously you mentioned cash flow. Obviously, in the classroom, we obviously cover finance and we look at profit and cash. And one of the misconceptions is around profit and cash being the same thing. And just from your point of view in the business, why is it so important to have understanding the difference between what cash is and what profit is?
Well, you can only spend cash. You can't. Profit, there's turnover, they say, is vanity, and profit is sanity. So always got to be looking at where the profit is. So well, you can hear a lot of my business is selling accommodation. So I have to know, and I have a template, how much does it cost me to have that room every night? So obviously I'm making twice as much money if I can get 2 people in a room than I can 1 person. So we've got a bottom line for that. And then we're a mid-price room. So that allows me to go up and down seasonally if I wanted to. Haven't needed to, so I can be okay with that. And the other areas where we make some money is on the food. Food, if anyone's going to be working in catering or restaurants, I was shocked at the tiny percentages that are on food. It's not a lot. It's between 5 and 8%. It's really small. So again, having somebody in the kitchen who is on top of those numbers is absolutely crucial when your margins are so tiny and you're dealing with fresh food. So for us, we're looking for organic food. So we know we're paying more for organic potatoes than we are from other potatoes. But that's because, again, comes back to our sustainability, and choices that we're making have to interfere with the profitability. So again, being on top of those numbers and having your managers know what they're doing, accommodating to the business needs. That's where the vision comes in. You need to let your staff know this is what we need to be doing. We are, we're here we're a commercial business. Let's be commercial about it. And that, if we can only get these little tiny margins, it's really important to have an excellent relationship with your supplier, because your supplier I can go anywhere. I don't have to. The worst number in business is 1. Don't ever have 1 supplier. So if I have a dairy supplier, I don't just want 1. I need to find out who else is out there. And they'll all bend over backwards because they're all chasing me for business anyway. So it's really important to have a portfolio in front of you of who can do what. And business is always changing as well. So knowing that we're opening in a few weeks' time, I've asked my food suppliers to contact me. They're on furlough at the moment, unfortunately, but they will have to contact me. But I do have their pricing grids. They've already sent them across for their seasonal pricing. So I'm already ahead in my mind of what we're going to be charging for food. And the accommodation's it doesn't vary, of course, but the food definitely does. So it's super important, me as the general manager, to have a really good management team helping me keep the costs down, but the quality up. I'm in hospitality. The thing doesn't matter what you do. What they'll remember is if you give them bad food, it's unforgivable. So it's got to be nutritious. They're expecting something wonderful. They don't want what they have at home. It's no point in giving them a salad and jacket potato. And we're vegetarian, of course. So we come up. We might have flowers in our salads, things that they wouldn't have at home. Again, a little bit of inspiration for them to go back with, to say, nasturtium flowers, or I think we're looking at begonias this year to put into the salads. So different ingredients and looking at that, at the lifestyle of that, but also having an eye on the profit line on that. As I say, turnover, I can tell you all day, that's fantastic. But if it's not making me any money, we won't be in business very long.
Well, it's really useful, that pursuit, because obviously we've talked about the sustainability point and maybe how that's driving things and the decisions and actions of the business and the staff having that awareness as well in terms of the choices they're making.
Yeah.
Underpinning all that is you're a commercial business and where that maybe crosses over in terms of the profitability. So it's really, really useful to understand that. And obviously you mentioned the importance of cash and movement of money in and out of the business and having that awareness as well. So thank you for that. I suppose the final one to finish on, in terms of your own experience, in terms of wider commercial experience, I know you've done other things apart from being a general manager in this business. Just want to touch on that in terms of, I know you've set we call a side hustle up. So if you could just briefly what that is and why you did that and maybe how you've marketed that and, the reasons for that.
Yeah. I am that kind of person. I've always had a side hustle. I've had all sorts of things. So, skincare, perfumery, weight loss. So I'm a people person, that's what I like doing. And during this, while I was on furlough, I thought, I was being asked by my neighbours because I've got a massive dog. I've got a great big German Shepherd. And I was at home and my neighbours were saying, Karen, can you help me? I can't get out because I'm on a Zoom call all afternoon and the dog's not been out. And I said, yeah, that's no problem. It dawned on me that actually I could do a little side hustle from my front room. I don't have to meet anybody. We literally do a little it's got a kind of Mexican standoff, handing over the dogs to me, and I take the dogs out. And I'm not your average dog walker, so I'm. So I created this. This is my gun dog hikes, and I ask people, are you worried that your dog's bored with the same old routine? Boredom creates bad behaviour, so chewing, barking, hassling. And I say, have you got time to socialise your dog? A lot of people working at home, they really haven't. And also, I don't know if you've heard this, but in the UK, last year we went mad about getting puppies. There's so many puppies. There's loads and loads of them. People are at home. And so now all these people are thinking, they're cute. But now they're about 9 months old and they're just driving the owners mad because they're full of energy and they want to go out. Mm-hmm. So call Karen. And then I take them out on either a 2-hour walk. And I also put some brain training in there. And I do some wild agility or take them to the beach. I take them to other places than where they live if they're in an urban environment. And I do a 90-minute one and I do a 60-minute one. And so I call them gold, silver and bronze. And I didn't make this up. I researched a guy called Dan Kennedy. He's all over the internet. He's been around for years. And he does a different way of, he does the old school style of marketing. I am living evidence, really, that the personal touch is actually making me kind of more trustworthy. Buyers have to trust you before they spend money. And, somebody bumps into me or they see my card in the window. Another trainer called me, and it's all by recommendation. Is working a lot better than social media. So when somebody comes to me or they find me through word of mouth, they get an hour with me. I did one yesterday with a lovely lady and her problem dog. And at that hour, it's an hour of my time, but I'm working out, do I want to work with her? And because it has to be a two-way thing. So I don't want to, and that's the other thing. I've put a filter in because I realised as well when I was working with some of the social media, people were just buying on price, and I'm not that kind of person. I am the most expensive in my area, and I will always be the most expensive one. So I do incremental rises practically every 3 months to make sure that I'm at the top of that level, and it filters out all those people that are buying on price, because actually they take up a lot of time, they don't pay, whereas people who aren't worried about buying on price have a different attitude, and it seemed to be, in my experience, they're a bit more open, and they're a bit more wanting to get involved with you as a person, because you're helping them, you're helping their family, you're helping their dog. And I can't see that that's a bad model going forward in any sort of smaller business. I think that personal touch, even to the point where I handwrite postcards to people to say thank you or let them know. I send them photographs of their dog. I'll do a personal letter, and I'll do small gifts. So it might be, especially when they signed up with me and they've maybe booked 6 weeks, I'll do a little package, not for the dog, but for the person, because they're paying me the money. So it might be like hand creams, because with COVID, it's hand creams that get, the sanitizers and things like that. And it reinforces that bond between me and that person. And that seems to be working really well. And it feels like I'm going retrospective, but it kind of is, because I think it works, but I've brought it up to date for what I need.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you for that. Just in terms of, you spotted an opportunity and you obviously take advantage of that. The way you positioned yourself in terms of your price point, and obviously that relationship you're saying you're getting with the customers, and the importance of that and that relationship. So really, really interesting, obviously, and your approach to marketing as well. Just one quick question on that. What's been the best seller in terms of the different products you had? I think you had 3 you mentioned there.
I have, yeah. So the best seller is actually the 60 minutes. And but once they bought the 60 minutes and they've got to know me, they always end up buying the afternoon out with me. So and I take the dogs on a picnic, and they do brain training, but they don't go for that one. I haven't had anyone buy that straight off without knowing me. Right. But it's like, trust, buy. That is the order of how these sales work. So they come in on that 1 hour, 60-minute thing, because they're not sure, let's take a risk, don't know what this woman's about. And, after a little while, I write to them, maybe either drop a little handwritten note in when I've dropped the dog back and say, oh, on Saturday, I've got a spare place. Does, Bonzo want to come on Saturday? And they usually say, oh, yeah, I'm going, I've got my mother over or something. Yeah, let's please take him out.
You're starting to build up that repeat purchase then.
Yes.
That loyalty. Really, really interesting, obviously. Just first of all, looking at your role as a general manager in, obviously, EarthSpirit Centre, what that looks like, what that means, and obviously the nature of that business. But then separately, your side hustle and what you've done there in terms of opportunity, and maybe how you approached that and positioned yourself and started to build that customer base and that repeat purchase. So for the students, really, really interesting. So thank you. Can I just
say something, Matt? I'm just, as you're saying that, I'm just being reminded that to make money, whether you're doing a little side hustle or you're in business, the money will always follow if you are providing a solution to a problem. So once you can identify a problem, people will pay for the solution. And I think that works equally well if you're an employee, whether it's, an efficiency or doing something in a different way. The business will appreciate that. And if you're owner of a business, you have to be relevant. So something, if you remember the video stores that used to be blockbusters, they just didn't see it coming that VHS was going out of fashion, and then they were overnight gone because they hadn't watched what was going on.
And it was a very unfortunate situation for them where they turned down an offer from Netflix, which I think is quite incredible on reflection now. But anyway, it's an interesting one that we explore. We look at the blockbuster Netflix.
Oh, good.
So it's really, really interesting that. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because it's obviously something I can explore in the classroom with the students. Just that's a really good point you made, that in terms of identifying a problem and coming up with solutions. So just as a final takeaway point, just one last thing I'd ask you, if you could be stood in front of the students today instead of doing this virtually, what advice would you give to any students that are thinking, well, one day I want to go into business, either that as a business owner or I want to work a particular role within a business? Any particular advice you give them in terms of pathways or future studies or anything like that?
Don't be afraid of making a mistake. There's a business in the UK, they sell it's for engines and household things. It's called WD-40, means water disbursement 40. Well, I found out recently that the 40 actually means it was the 40th formula. So they had to throw away 39 earlier formulas. So if you've got an idea and it doesn't work the first time, you've still got the problem. So just keep going until you find the solution to that problem.
Yeah.
And I think another one, I heard this was somebody, one of my bosses gave to me, which has stuck with me, which is don't judge a person by what they say, judge them by what they do. And sometimes when you're in business and you think, well, how did this situation happen? You've got a problem ahead of you. It's looking at where the mismatch was. And then it takes the heat out of the situation where you're thinking, goodness me, I've got to get this turned around quickly, and just look at what can be done and who can do it, and get a good team around you. I think Richard Branson's got a good idea. He hasn't got all the skills. I haven't got all the skills, so I buy in the expertise when I need it.
No, excellent. Some great takeaway points for students to consider there in terms in terms of their future pathways and the opportunities that they want to explore. So thank you for that. It won't take any more of your time. It's really it's been really beneficial. I found it really interesting in terms of a unique business in terms of its foundation, vision, its mission, in terms of who it's targeting. So thank you for that, and also thank you, obviously, in terms of your own personal experience as well. So I'm sure the students will engage with it and benefit from it, and we'll have lots of discussions in the classroom about this. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.